Okay, so what am I going to talk about? So I'm going to introduce you to the Nuke family, which is very exciting. So we talked about Nuke Studio at NAB, which is our last week trade show. And here I'm going to introduce you to the rest of the family, which is obviously Nuke and Nuke X. So yeah, Nuke Studio. So now we have a new range of Nuke. We've got Nuke Studio, which is like the top of the range. We also have Nuke X, which is our premium compositing package, and we have also Nuke, a regular Nuke as well. So we have a whole range of different Nukes available. So there they are, the whole range, the whole family, Nuke 9. This is what we're announcing here at Siggraph. Look at those animations, lovely. So what I'm going to talk about is the updates that are across the whole range. So I'm going to give you a few slides first, and then I'm going to go into a demo, and I'm going to show you some really cool things. So we've done a lot of work on performance, huge amount of work on performance. I'm going to show you some graphs later of some amazing numbers, which, oh, there's a bit of cheers over there. Woo, performance, so exciting. Yes, we've done a lot of work on that. And I'm going to show you some sort of graphs later that show how well we've done on that. We've also put a native flipbook. So the studio player that's in Nuke Studio is trickled down back into Nuke and Nuke X as well. So we've got a real-time player with audio in Nuke and Nuke X. Planet Tracker, a brand new one, does a really good job. I'll show you a demo of that a bit later. This is really exciting for Nuke X's. Brand new version of the retimer Chronos and a vector generator for vectors and motion blur as well. And I'm going to show you that too. OFlow has got GPU acceleration now. Denoise has moved from Nuke X to Nuke. So that's the core updates. Also, we have the brand new product, which is Nuke Studio, which we announced at NAB, which is VFX, editorial, and finishing combined. So basically, it's taking all of the power of a timeline and a compositing system and putting it into one. So it appeals to a lot of different people, we think. These sort of jobs. Oh, I went back. I went too fast. Let's go backwards. There we go. So we talked to a lot of people when we were designing this, and these are the sort of things that people said to us. They want to have end-to-end control. They want to know their colors correct. They want to have editorial that fits in the pipeline, et cetera, et cetera. Basically, they said, we love Nuke, or we want to have more Nuke in the pipeline. So we created...
We need to swap your mic out.
Oh, why? Is it dropping out?
We're having
Technical difficulties.
Should we sing?
Jazz hands.
Should we dance? Anyone got any good jokes? Anyone? Anyone got any good ideas for the Food and Mole competition later? I know there's some really good ones coming in via Twitter. So the Food and Mole competition is Chris Pan, director of Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2, is going to draw live a Food and Mole that you've created. It's one that doesn't exist yet. Can be a mythical creature or real creature, must be vegetable, fruit, or food item. Now back to you, John.
Okay, thank you. Oh, I'm really loud now. I'm like doubly as loud as before. Okay, what was I saying? I was talking about Nuke. I was talking about people want to stay in Nuke, and they want to do these sorts of things. So we made a product that allowed you to do these things and stay in Nuke. And it's called Nuke Studio, and which is what I'm going to demo as well as the rest of Nuke. So what's in Nuke Studio in addition to Nuke? It's got full online editing toolkit, so editorial tools. It's got familiar Nuke effects directly in the timeline, but in real time. It's got the full compositing of Nuke X and a timeline combined. We've got real 4K playback out to AJA and Blackmagic cards. Kind of rendering built in. It's got a render farm built in to this thing. And it's built like for two kind of needs. It's built as a single seat thing, so if you're a one person that needs to do a whole job, like a short film or a very quick commercial, you can do everything in Nuke, compositing, timeline, editorial, but it's also really built for collaborative. So, you know, we're all about having things done efficiently and having teams of people working together. So it's really built as the tool that's going to be able to be the director or be the VFX supervisor of a team of Nuke artists working together as well. So what I'm trying to say here is we've really got a Nuke that's going to appeal to any one of these kind of roles. If you're a pipeliner, compositor, VFX supervisor, animator, there's a Nuke really for any one of you guys out there. So that's pretty much my little spiel on the slides at the beginning. I'm going to go into the demo. Last time I did a demo at NAB, we're really focusing on one aspect of these kind of three aspects of Nuke, which was focusing on the commercials. We did like a short commercial, but this time I'm going to switch it up and go to a different sort of avenue, and I'm going to talk about film, because we're in Vancouver now, which is obviously a big film town. So we're going to look at a short film, and I'm going to show a short film in Nuke Studio, and also we're going to go out to Nuke, so I'm going to show you some of those new tools that I described earlier as well. And maybe the next time I'll do episodic TV. Where's Mike Romey from Zoic? He's not here, but if he was here, I would do something about that. So what we're going to do, we're going to look at this short film called Shh, which is done by actually a Vancouver native, Shervin Shoigan, I can never pronounce it, Shervin, who made this short film, which we're going to show in Nuke Studio and Nuke today. So thanks to Shervin. So if we could swap to the other machine, please, that'd be lovely. Thank you. Okay, so can we see it? Okay, so we're gonna start off here in the Nuke Studio interface, looking at this short film. It's pretty much a 10-minute short film that was put together here. So we're just playing it back here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the role of the visual effects supervisor to begin with, and then I'm going to sort of morph into being a compositor for a while, and then I'm going to go back to being kind of a supervisor. So you've got to pretend a bit that I'm more than one person here. And what we're going to do is we're going to start off in the timeline, looking at this short film. And you can see there's loads and loads of edits going on here, lots of different timeline, multiple tracks and so on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how we online this and then how we did the visual effects in it. Now, I'm not going to do any editing in here, but I want to describe to you that there is editing tools in here. So I could have very easily edited this entire short film within Nuke Studio. We've got all of our kind of familiar editing tools here, like roll, ripple, slide, razor tool, that kind of thing in here. You could also pull in all of your edits from another editorial package as well. So if you wanted to pull in an EDL file or a Final Cut XML file, or what we just recently added was AAF from Avid, you could bring in the edit from there as well. But I'm not going to show you that today. We're just going to accept that we've already got the timeline in there. Also, if you had a film pipeline where you keep all this stuff in a database or something like that, because I know a lot of big film studios keep information like that inside their database. It's all Python driven as well. So if you wanted to suck a timeline in from the database, that's very easy too. So very flexible in that way. Another thing you might want to do when you first come into the timeline here is start to do maybe some setup for each one of the shots. Maybe you wanted to do some re-racking or do some LUTs or something like that. That's very easy as well. So this is what I was describing before, which is the real-time effects in the timeline. So those of you that are nukers will be familiar with these tools straight away. So for instance, if I want to put a transform in there, I just put a transform node. It's not really a node now because it's in the timeline, but it's a node in Nuke language. And now we get this transform jack. We get the transforms here. We get your animation tools. If I set a key here, we can animate this as well. And I have the Cove editor and all the familiar things that you would see in Nuke, you have there in the timeline as well. Also, if you wanted to say do like color corrects across this thing, or do maybe a CDL file, which you've got from the editorial, or maybe you've got a LUT that you want to apply per shot, you can easily do that as well. So 3D LUTs, open color driven, all this stuff is built into Nuke Studio. So there's a LUT for that shot, for instance. So yeah, so there's a lot of online tools there. There's lots of nice things for Conform, lots of editorial tools, and again, Python-driven, so if you want to bring in stuff from outside, you can. Okay, so I'm going to move on to actually looking at the compositing here now, rather than editorial tools. And this is actually a horror film, in case you didn't realize. So what we need to do is actually composite in some of these beasties into the live action here. So if we look at the shots we've got to do, I've actually got the VFX on this track here, which are all the shots that we need to do VFX on. And up here, I've got some CG renders, which are the beasties that we need to composite in. So if I do a wipe here, we can see the kinds of things that we need to do. Let's just put that over. So we need to like put in this gross, I don't know what you call it, thing coming out of this guy's mouth. And we've got to fix this up. We've got to do a bit of roto there. We've also got to composite in this guy up here as well. This monster has this kind of beast thing coming out here. So there's a bit of compositing we've got to do. We've got to make this look beautiful. We've got to make it look integrated. And we've got to make it look scary. So I'm going to start with this last shot here. And we're going to start doing the setup for this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start compositing this shot just to show you how you can do the compositing inside Nuke Studio. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click on this guy and say, I'm going to create a composite out of it. So there's two options here. It's create comp, which creates a basic composite based on the template that you've set up. Or there's this other one called create comp special, which basically gives you all the options before you create the comp. So I'm going to show you that one just to show you all the options. Let's do this. So we've got lots of different options here about how it's going to create the comp on disk, what tracks it's going to put in there, and so on. I'm going to go for this option down here. I'm going to say collate shot timings and include the effects. So all of these effects that we've laid on the timeline will be in the comp. So let's just do a create comp there. Okay, so what that's done, it's created this composite container on the timeline, and it's red initially. Red means no renders yet. So we haven't rendered anything. And what I'm going to do is just double click on that guy, and then we immediately go into the compositing environment. So we've got our node graph there. So this thing is completely combined, right? So if I go back in here, we're in the timeline. I go back over here, we're in the compositing environment. So it's not really, any separate apps or whatever. It's all built into one. And I can change workspaces as well, like to have different layouts where I've got things in different places and whatever. So I could dock these things in different places. If I had multiple monitors, I could put my node graph on one side and put my timeline on the other side. So I'm going to go back to finishing. It's my favorite workspace. And go back to the node graph, and we're going to start compositing here. So what it's done here is created two little tracks here where we've got our shot name here and the track name. So that exactly matches what we've got in the timeline. And we're going to start compositing here. We've got our grade there. I'm just going to delete that because I don't want that. And I'm going to layer my background over my foreground. Pretty much the most basic compositing you can do. And through the magic of color space here, I'm going to fix that. And look at that. It's already almost perfect. And I save that. I'm going to go back into the timeline and then actually preview what this looks like by saying render. So that's going to render the comp directly in the timeline there. And then we can see what my fantastic composite looks like as a first step. Let's wait for that to render and make sure I'm viewing the right thing. There we go. OK. So we've got our initial version of the comp there directly in the timeline. I can now play this back in real time and see what it looks like. It looks pretty nasty in terms of compositing skills and in terms of horror effect. Pretty nasty. So it's OK, right? So I'm the visual effects supervisor. I don't want to actually do all this work myself. I want to get the team to start working on it and improve this composite somewhat on this original version. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually send some notes to my compositing guys so they can start making this look beautiful. So let's have a look at that. I'm going to go to my annotation tool. I'm going to start doing some annotations here. So first of all, this, I haven't got my whack on, by the way, so excuse my bad mouse drawing. Roto, please. Really, because that's, that needs to be rotoed, and that needs to be like properly integrated, right? So let's make a note there. Hopefully the compositor will understand what I mean there. And also this, that is moving pretty quickly, and really it needs, let's change color here. It needs motion blur, right? Because I don't believe it. Do you believe it? No, it looks fake. It looks like CG. Bit of motion blur there as well. So that's looking pretty good as my notes to my compositor. So what I'm going to do is I export those guys out, and then we're going to pretend to be somebody else right now. So right now, I'm obviously the visual effects supervisor in control, telling my team what to do. But now I'm going to become the compositor. Joe, I like to call him John, is the visual effects supervisor. Joe is the compositor who's in the basement. who actually does all the actual proper work on this stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave Nuke Studio now, and we're going to go into Nuke. So let me minimize this. Minimize. And look what I've got behind there. Nuke. So this is regular Nuke. So who am I now? Joe, compositor in the basement. So I'm going to open this guy up and see what I have to do. So this is the shot. So when I exported that stuff out, I actually created Nuke comps on disk. So it doesn't all live in that timeline. It's available to anyone to go in there and start working on. So I'm going to open up this comp here, which is the one that we looked at previously. And this is the thing that I set up, the basic composite. And now I'm going to look at my annotations down the bottom here. And we're going to go to version 2, because that's the first versions with the notes on it. And if I go to my annotations tab, and then I now tab through here, you can see here we've got our notes there saying roto please. And if we go to the next one, we've got another note saying motion blur. So this is kind of telling me, as a compositor, what I've got to do. Now I know motion blur, roto, integrate. Yes, OK. So let's start doing the comp. And you know what? Joe had some forethought when he saw the animatic for this, and he knew that maybe this would happen, motion blur and integration. So what he's done is smartly, let's put it over here, intelligently actually pre-done the whole thing. Yes, what a smart guy. So let's just look at that. So disconnect that, connect that. So this is actually my first excuse to show you the new features of Nuke X, which is the motion blur, new version of the motion blur 2. So basically, in the new motion blur, we have a new mode called regularized motion blur, which is a new version of the algorithm called TVME, which is a new algorithm we've got both in Chronos, motion blur, and vector generator. So this has come from research that we did for Ocular 3. It's a brand new algorithm. It's a lot smoother. It's a lot more, how do I describe it? A lot less artifacts than before. So when things go wrong, they go wrong in a nice way instead of a nasty way, and they go wrong less often. So you got people in the audience are nodding like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Okay, so this is the first version of that, the first plugin that I'm going to talk about, which has this new algorithm in it. And all of these different plugins, like the Chronos and the motion blur and the vector generator, have these new modes, regularized versus local. Local is the old one. And we also have new filtering and new options for retiming as well. So I'll show you a bit more detail in a minute, but I'm going to start off with the motion blur. You can see there, it's lovely motion blur on the beastie there. It's looking pretty integrated now. Maybe that's our first version done. And now we want to go back into the review process and go back to the visual effects supervisor who's going to look at this in the context of the cut. So what I'm going to do now is save this as a new version. So save new comp version. And now Joe in the basement's going back upstairs to do the review session with, let's close this one, with the visual effects supervisor. We're back in here. So I'm going to look for a new version on disk by saying scan for new versions up here. And we found one new version, which Joe has done downstairs. And now I can very easily just version up to that guy. There was a render process here, which I've skipped, by the way. But we did render this out. And now we have that new version in there in the timeline. And we can start playing that and seeing what it looks like and doing our review. Motion blur is looking pretty good, do you think? Yeah. But this, are you serious? I mean, come on. Really? Are you serious? Yes, not good enough. I mean, do you believe it? I don't believe that. This is. I mean, I don't know how much I pay these guys, but all right. So what we're going to do is we're going to re-export that annotation just so that Joe knows he needs to do a bit more work on it. So we're going to go to export, re-export annotations. Okay, we're going to go back into the basement now with Joe, and he was hoping that that was all he had to do, but unfortunately, if he versions up his annotations, he's got to do a bit more work on that as well. So that's what I'm trying to show you there is obviously the kind of to and fro that you can do with Nuke Studio. So you can work in the timeline, you can be the kind of the leader or the supervisor and send messages back to your team, and they can pick them up and they can do their compositing, but then the composites can come back into the timeline as well. So I'm going to show one more thing in Nuke before we go on to pretty much Studio for the rest of the thing. But I'm going to show you really in Studio what the compositors did for the rest of the show. And in there, I'm going to show you Nuke X, and I'm going to show you Nuke, different things that were done. But before I do that, I want to show you one more thing in Nuke. Whoa, wrong mouse. Which is the new flipbook panel. I just want to copy and paste these shots, actually, into the timeline, which I forgot to do before. This is pretty cool, though. Copy and paste from the timeline into the composite. And I'm just going to make a read of this guy as well. Let's show this. So I just want to show you one more thing in Nuke before we go back to Studio, which is this new flipbook panel that we've got. So if I'm a compositor, I want to review my stuff in context. You normally do a flipbook, right? Previously, if you did a flipbook, you would have the option of frame cycler up the top. Now you have a built-in flipbook. So we didn't even give it a name. We just call it default, which is like the built-in flipbook. So if I flipbook this now, hang on, I've got to look at it first. Flipbook this guy now. What you'll see is it'll come up in its own panel over in the left over there in a second. Bit of software. It's gone black. Awesome. OK, it's gone to the right color now. So basically, we have this extra flipbook panel there. So we have the audio controls, we have the gain, the gamma, all this stuff from Nuke Studio. You know, the player that we were showing in Nuke Studio, the real-time player. That real-time player is in Nuke and Nuke X as well now. So you can have your audio, you can have your real-time playback directly inside Nuke here as well. So basically, I've flipbooked in my awesome comp there and the shot before and after, so I can review this stuff in the context of the edit. And as I said before, yeah, it's a real-time player, and it's got audio as well. OK. So we're going to shut down Nuke now. We're going to go back to Nuke Studio, and I'm going to show you some other stuff that we did in the edit. And look at that. It's crashed. Lovely. Don't send. Beta software still. That won't happen when we release it. All right. So let's go back into the timeline and show you some other things. So remember before when we did create comp, it gave me all those options on how I was going to export that stuff. You can also pre-export stuff, which I've actually done for all of these comps. So we use the normal export to export out comps for all of these items down here. And what I can do is I can bring them back in the timeline by looking at the tags that I've set on the export. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to look at these shots. I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to say build track from export tag. And that's going to bring in the export that I did previously. So I press build on that. That brings in all the shots the guys have been compositing. And as before, I can look at the different versions that they've been doing. I can start reviewing now in the timeline what they've done. If I want to go in and check out their comps, maybe in the review process, I want to go inside and see what they did on their comps, maybe correct some stuff or make some notes to them. I can do that as well. So this is the great thing about Studio. It's kind of like an overarching control over all the comps that people are doing. So let's have a look at a few other things in the timeline, a few other features. Actually, before I do that, I want to show you one other thing, which is cool, which people have asked for quite a lot, which is burn-ins as well. So we can do burn-ins in the timeline just by layering up normal Nuke nodes with expressions to show you the time code and the shot name. And we've got a whole bunch of metadata in there that you just need to type the expression in, and you'll get it displayed on the screen like that. So that's really cool too, because I know for dailies, you need to have that sort of information in there. But I'm just going to put that track down there because it's distracting for me for the minute. Put it down there. It's all layered, so if I put it in the bottom, you won't see it. Audio as well down there. OK, so there was a bunch of work that people did on this movie, and I'm going to show you some of the other features of Nuke and Nuke X just by looking through the timeline here. So let's go back maybe up to the front here to this shot and see what they did on this. So as I said, there was quite a bit of cleanup that needed to be done. Like in a few shots, there was like some roto. We need to remove a boom from one of the shots. In this particular shot, we actually needed to grade this guy's hat a bit because they didn't like the color of it. It was kind of a bit dark. So we needed to do a roto and grade the front of it. So to do that, what we did, let's have a look at the comp, is actually did a planar track on this, which is my excuse to show you the new planar tracker in Nuke X. So let's look at that. Let's look at that. Go inputs here. So yeah, so what we did is a planar, we did a roto shape on this guy's head there so that we can do our mat, and then we tracked this using the planar tracker. So we added a planar tracker in, I think it was Nuke 6.3, or was it 7? Maybe Nuke 7, the new planar tracker. And this is a brand new version of the tracker with a new algorithm built in. So what it does is a thing called region tracking. The old one did feature-based tracking. This does region tracking. So if I start tracking this, you'll see that this actually locks on really well and actually tracks on that really blurry and grainy piece of footage really well. And if I actually showed you a demo of the old tracker on this same footage, I would press track. It would fail immediately because actually it couldn't track this stuff at all. But this new tracker, which has this new region tracking mode, can cope with blurry footage, can cope with footage with not many features in it, that sort of thing, which is what you want to do when you're tracking a planar surface. So if you've ever tried the planar tracker before in Nuke and found that it didn't work for you, you need to try the new one in Nuke 9 because it tracks really well. So we got our little mat out of that. Now we can color correct it, and we're very happy. I want to show you a few other examples as a sort of improvements in the tracking as well. So again, you have to imagine, before you were imagining I was a visual effects supervisor and then I was a compositor downstairs, now you need to imagine we're working on a completely different show where this footage is shown. So horror movie, now we're looking at something different. Don't freak out that we're changing to look at something different. But I needed to show you this stuff because it's really cool to see how much improved the algorithm is and how much of a better job it does compared to the old version. So let's just wait for that to catch up. So this is an example of Nuke 8, the latest version of Nuke 8, planar tracker, and Nuke 9, the beta of Nuke 9 that we're looking at right now. And this is doing a stabilize on these two plates. You can see on the left-hand side that even though this looks quite solid, fairly solid, the actual planar surface is all over the place. As you can see, it's warping the image. If you were going to do a corner pin and put that into place, that's the sort of result you would get. It's not exactly correct, right? And on the left, the right-hand side, much better, right? Pretty solid, believable. And another example I'll show you as well, which is this guy here, which is actually from our NAB demo, the cows demo we call it. It's just an out point over here. Which is a similar sort of thing, a little bit more subtle, but it's the same sort of thing. If you look on the right-hand side, this is the new tracker. Look at that tracking marker over there in between the grid. See how it's completely in the same spot and it doesn't move at all? Look at the grid over here. See where that tracking marker is? Wait for it to cache. You see there drifting? It's all over the place. So it's just not locked on. Whereas on this side, we're 100% good. This side, not so good. So this is what I'm talking about when we're talking about much more locked on. I can't have 5 more minutes. You're ripping me off. It's going to be 10 minutes, Bex. Forget about it. Okay. I'm doing the same speed as yesterday. Come on. You're clocking it. Yeah. These guys want to see motion, but they want to see Chronos, OFO. Yeah. Okay, so that's the planar tracker. As you can see, much better. Blurry footage, stuff like that. It does a really good job where the old one didn't do so well. Let me show you one more thing. Well, actually 2 more things. 3 more things. Let's look at this shot as well. Let's go into the composite for this one because I'm going to have to rush now because I'm being told to get off stage, basically. Let's look at this composite here. So again, I'm just going into the timeline, seeing what the guys did. Let's have a look at this shot here. Press play. So in this shot, I'm going to show you the retiming. So the girl's walking through the door. She kind of walks in really fast and then slows down. I actually thought this was retimed the first time I saw it, but this was the acting. So for me, my creative decision was to change the speed of this because I didn't like the way that she did it. I mean, I love her. She was a great actress, but this shot, I think it should be a slow walk in and then dramatic brushing of the hair afterwards. So we need to change the speed. So this is where we're going to use our retimer Chronos to do this. So let's have a look at that and show you the 2 different, the improvements that we've got in this new Chronos. So first of all, like I showed you in the motion blur, there's 2 new modes, the TVME or regularized mode and local, which is the old mode. And over here, I've got the old version of Chronos so we can compare the difference in the algorithm. And what I'm going to show you is some of where the old one started to fail. So here we have an example already where the hair started to be kind of destroyed by the old algorithm. And if we look at the new one, okay, so you can already see the difference, right? Let's go to another few frames of this where I know, I mean, this is quite a difficult thing for the algorithm to do. There's a lot of smoke, there's a lot of hair, a lot of detail in there. But let's have a look. But the new one, there we get, again, it's getting messed up. Let's look at another frame where, you know, like as the shadows are going over, the old version is really getting confused and starting to destroy the image. But if we look at the new one, yeah, so these are the sort of improvements that we're getting from the old version to the new version. I think I've got another frame where it kind of goes wrong as well. Right? Yeah, there again, you know. So these are the sort of improvements. So it's, well, first of all, it's a lot better and it's not being destroyed. And the other thing is that when it does go wrong, it goes wrong in a more pleasing way. Do you know what I mean? So the artifacts are a bit more rounded and not as nasty as that sort of digital, horrible kind of stuff that the old algorithm was doing. So I'll show you a few more examples, actually, which I have got in my tool sets here. Kronos 2 examples. Okay, so again, we're going to switch context a bit out of the horror movie to a few examples that are on different films that we tried this out on. So let's have a look. And thanks very much to various studios for giving us this footage. So here's another example. This is from Tron, where, let's have a look. Okay, there we go. So this is from Tron. So look at this. On the right-hand side is the old algorithm. I mean, it's an interesting CG effect, but I don't think it's really what we intended. So it's really breaking up over there. If you look over this side, look at that. It's beautiful, right? So a big difference in the algorithm there. And here's another example. I'll skip over the buildings, because I haven't got time. But this is another one we shot, and this is particularly a bit more subtle, but it's the same sort of thing. I mean, do we mean to have this heat haze in the English countryside? No, I don't think so. So this is another kind of example of where, you know, instead of having that kind of, you know, really unbelievably, how do you explain it? It's not a natural kind of thing that's happening to the image, whereas over here it's looking really good. Okay, so I'm gonna have to show you one more thing, and then I'm gonna have to finish. So let's go back to the timeline. So we've seen Kronos, we've seen Planet Tracker, we've seen stuff on the timeline, annotations, stuff like that. I'm going to show you a bit on performance now. So let's go back to the timeline and have a look at this shot over here, which is our opening sequence for this film. I'll turn my annotations off. Here, which is our opening sequence. This was actually done inside Nuke as well. The entire opening sequence was done in the Nuke 3D system. So let's double click on this guy to go inside that comp. Don't save. And this is going to show you the 3D scene that was used to set up that title sequence. It's basically a bunch of cards, you know, in the 3D environment. We've got shadows on there. We've got lights. We've got stuff like that. By the way, have you seen how this is all kind of cleaned up as well compared to the old Nuke? So we've done a bit of work on the UI, making it a little bit more streamlined. We swap between 2D and 3D. We kind of hide some of the buttons. You know, just did a bit of cleanup there. We've got our like controls for the grid and the headlamp stuff in the 3D. You know, just a bit more streamlined as well in the UI. So why have I gone into this 3D scene? Well, one, to show you that we can do the whole 3D sequence at the beginning of this short movie in here, but the most important thing is to show you some of the new options inside the scanline renderer and talk about performance. So in the scanline renderer now we have four new filters available, which are nearest, trilinear, bilinear, and anisotropy. So it's quite difficult to pronounce that one. And what are those filters? They're actually map filters built in the scanline renderer. So those of you who do 3D will be familiar with map mapping. It means that if you have really big textures that you're sampling down, we can process them much more efficiently, which makes the stuff go a lot faster. So we did a lot of work on those, and the quality is really good as well, and that's why we've got several of them. You can pick which one you want. It goes from sort of fastest to slowest, nearest being the fastest, anisotropic being the slowest. So what I'm going to do is talk about performance, and I'm going to show you some graphs of that stuff. And one of the bits of the performance was doing that map mapping stuff in the scanline renderer, but there was actually a lot of other performance tweaks we've done as well in this version. So if I go back to the laptop, I will show you some sexy graphs that talk about performance. Because I think I've talked about performance quite a bit, and over the years saying, yes, we've improved stuff, but we haven't given you any empirical evidence, So this year we timed everything, and we've got graphs showing you that it's actually not just me waving my hands, doing jazz hands. It's actually true because we did graphs and we timed everything. So let me talk about it and show you the graphs. Okay, so this is the average speed up that we had from Nuke 8 to Nuke 9. And this is on our internal test scripts. Internal test scripts are stuff like Avatar, this sort of short film, some commercials, Tron, lots of different stuff that our clients send us that we have internally for testing. They're production scripts. It's not just stuff that we've made up. This is our average across all of our test scripts, our average improvement in time. Some did better, some did not as good, but on average, it's about 2 times faster on average, which is, across all these different scripts, good, right? 2 times better. Now I'm going to break it down and go to the individual bits and show you how much of improvement each little section made as well. And this is a little bit more dramatic because it's, being a bit more isolated. So let's go look at the next one, which is a scanline render performance. So this is what I was showing before, the map filtering. It's not just that. We did improvements to the multi-threading. We did improvements to the way it dissects geometry and so on. Our average improvement was 3.7 times faster on a range of 3D scenes, average, okay? Another one, it gets better and better, these graphs. I love this. This is multi-threaded EXR performance. This is talking about scanline compressed EXRs. We worked a lot on the threading. So this is our average improvement on multi-threaded EXR performance, 4.8 times faster. It's getting good, right? And so what this is about is improving the threading. So, this is, I think, a 24-core machine, something like that. But it didn't scale that well with the cores, but now it does. So this is why we're getting these great improvements. So it even gets better than this. Does anyone use tiled EXRs? Okay, deep EXRs. Okay, deep EXRs first. So if you do deep compositing, we did a lot of improvements to the deep compositing reader as well. 13.5 times faster. So enormous. So deep data is very heavy, right? So anything you do to speed up the I/O for deep is important. So this makes it a lot faster. And this is what I'm talking about, tiled EXR performance. Yeah. Does anyone use tiled EXRs in Nuke? Probably not, because it's really slow. But it's not in Nuke 9. 25.6 times faster. Okay, so I think there's one more. Or maybe there's no more. Oh, particle render performance, yes. So this is on average a big particle thing with lots of overlapping particles, lots of geometry being rendered, 2.8 times faster. So I'm honest when we're saying we did a lot of work on performance this year. We actually did a lot of work on it, and we did lots of empirical timings. We also added lots of debugging tools and ways for you to find out why your renders are going slow as well, which is what we use for this. So for those of you who want to analyze why a render went slow, you can dump out an XML file that tells you every single node, how long it took to run, how long it took to do the setup, how long it took to do the caching, et cetera, et cetera. So you can debug, when your render suddenly goes to 4 hours or whatever, you can say, Joe Compositor, it's because you put that node there, and that's taking all of the time of the render, right? And that's how we, worked out all this stuff as well. And we found out all the bottlenecks. A lot of it is I/O, so that's why we did all that work there. Okay, so I'm going to need to wrap it up. Should I go back to... No, we'll just talk about it. Yes, back to there. Oh, no. Which way are we going? Yes, back to there, back to there, back to there, before I wrap it up. So I'm going to show you back to the timeline, and then I'm going to say goodbye. Or apparently I'm not going to go back to the timeline. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up. So... There we go, back to the timeline. Fine. Okay, so what have we talked about? So I played the role of the visual effects supervisor. We brought the entire short film into Nuke Studio. We've gone in, we've started doing our annotations, we've done our re-racking, we've done our real-time effects in the timeline to do cleanup, OpenIO, Color IO, doing LUTs per shot, stuff like that. We could have put this in from a database if we wanted to. And then we went out, we started doing some compositing directly in the timeline, rendering the timeline, did some annotations, went back to Joe in the basement. He did his comping, brought it back into the timeline, did some reviewing and stuff like that. And then I've gone through and reviewed the entire timeline, looking at all the composites my team has done, looked at the new Chronos, looked at the new tracker, and other new features of Nuke, and we showed you the performance. And now we're back in the timeline. I can export this thing out now to deliverable, and we're done. Yes? So let's go back. Before I wrap up, I want to show you the trailer for the film. Does everyone want to see that? Okay, so let's look at the trailer. And then I've only run 10 minutes over time. Can we? Is it going to work? There we go. Man, I'm scared. That was awesome.
Am I talking to John or Joe? Who am I talking to now?
I don't know.
And should I be worried about these split personalities?
A schizophrenic.
I have a lot of questions.
Really?
They want me to get closer to you.
You want to be on camera?
I don't want. They want me to.
They want you. Sure.
So okay, I have a number of questions. As a 3D person,
yes,
I saw the motion blur estimation that was done. Mm-hmm. There was no vector buffer there. That was
internally there is a vector buffer. So there's internally it generates a bunch of vectors to do that.
But it did that from the source footage. It wasn't rendered.
No,
That's
exactly.
What I'm saying.
So it does optical flow stuff to detect where things are moving, and then it uses that to generate the motion blur.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So that's the same technology that's the vector generator, which will give you the vectors if you want to use them for something,
right.
which will just give you the vectors. Or when we do the retiming, use the vectors as well to decide on where to push the image around.
That's very, very cool. I also want to just give some quick kudos, if you will, for the workflow in UI. And there's a lot of things that you just sort of slid right through, because here at Siggraph, we want to talk about fancy algorithms. But I was wowed a little bit by actually just the navigation of the timeline, like the way you're getting around. Like I use a lot of video editors, and it's the simple things that make me excited. And that to me, I was like, hey. So speaking of UI, it seems very configurable.
Yes,
right?
Definitely, yeah.
And so you've got Joe might have one environment, John has a different environment.
Yeah.
But do you think that having those things all combined, are you seeing that as the users work inside of Studio, that actually kind of changes their role, essentially, having access?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we're trying to do with this as well is kind of widen the range of what compositors can do. It now allows you to have a sequence, allows you to see things in context, allows you to do things you couldn't have done before. You would have to go to some other tools. And it's like I described it before in the opening slides as well. People have said to us they love Nuke and they want to stay in Nuke.
Right.
They want to be able to, but they want to have the power of being able to see a sequence and be able to do stuff on the timeline as well. Yeah. And so this is why we built it. They say, well, we'll give you a timeline in Nuke. You don't have to leave Nuke. And then that's actually made people really happy. They don't need to do that.
Well, and all the work that you've done to facilitate collaboration, but at the same time, which is fantastic, and it's a lot of heavy lifting to do that, to make it seem easy. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it seems like this also makes, while Nuke is very much a pipeline tool and can be used in large facilities, Studio seems to me to bridge the gap to the independents and allow someone who's an independent or a small team to wrap their arms around this entire process.
Absolutely, yeah. That's what we try to do as well. It's trying to kind of hit 2 roles there. Still be very familiar to the big pipeline guys because you can configure it. You can do Python. You can pull all this stuff in from your database and do that sort of stuff if you want. But then at the same time, if you're a small kind of independent person, it gives you the power to be able to do everything as in the single seat without having to jump out to different applications. You don't have to configure this stuff and know pipeline stuff to run it because it'll do all that stuff out of the box. But if you need to configure it, go ahead.
It's nice to have the default environment, so you just pull out of a list, but then if you want to build your own. So if you build your own config, can you then save that and then recall it?
Yeah, absolutely. You can save it. You can, as I said before, put it in the database. You can do your, set up environments if you want. Yeah.
Right. So we do have a question from the internet that I'm going to ask. And like all things internet, this is why they can't have nice things.
Okay.
Because you say, you want to ask a question, you know what they do? They're tricky. They throw in a feature request in the form of a question.
Okay. Hopefully, maybe we've done it.
So it's not really a question. It's really a feature request. It says, can we have Blackmagic DNG native, color space native in the read node before 9 releases?
We do have a lot more formats for this release. So we have like MXF, DNxHD, Sony F55, 65. We're adding like lots more support for different formats. We have got a prototype DNG reader.
All right. So hint, hint, wink,
so
wink, nudge, nudge.
Maybe we'll get that as well.
Maybe.
But yeah, prototype.
And then I had one other Brad question.
So it might happen.
And I see Bex is inching over with the big little Bo Beep hook, and she's going to pull off the stuff.
Okay.
Oh, we're okay? Okay. So the burn-ins.
Yeah.
And this is, I was noticing a lot of things like the annotations and the burn-ins seems like a very clever use of Nuke nodes, sort of skinned in a very useful way, right, in the timeline. So the expressions, for those who may not be familiar with running expression, I know a lot of Nuke people are, but people coming to Studio may not be. That also means that while they have the simplicity of just dropping a burn-in and then getting that information, but they can use the expressions to put a completely custom format. I mean, there are other things they can drop in there.
Yeah. So expressions are basically like special tokens that come from the metadata of the files or whatever. So if you type that in, then it'll display on the screen. So you've got stuff like the shot name, the time code, the real name, the type of file, the color space, all that stuff is available as an expression. So if you want to put that in a burn-in on the screen, you can. And what I did in the demo was just lay down some text nodes that did that. But if you want to build a custom tool that has that already pre-set up, like a gizmo in the Nuke language, you can build that and you can put that in the timeline as well.
Very cool. And when you created the comp at the very beginning of the demo, and then you went in, everything was just all laid out nice and tidy and organized.
Yeah.
Was that pre-done, or does it do that for you?
That does it for you.
That's nice.
Yeah. And those of you who are Nukers as well, you might have seen that there was a bunch of backdrop nodes there, which are layered on top of each other. You couldn't layer them before. Now you can layer them. So you can put a backdrop on top of a backdrop.
Nice.
It's got an ordering now. So yeah.
All right. So do we have questions from the audience?
Has anyone got a question here? Okay. John, thank you.
Thank you.
Round of applause.
Thanks, Bex.